Monday, the 25th of January 2016. Welcome to this week's edition of Property Chat with James Alexander, Ken Hume and Kit Myery. Kit, we've had a busy week.
Yes, just come off the back of a very busy week, and we're expecting the week coming to be just as busy. The probably most notable thing in the most recent weeks is just the demand that we're getting as we predicted.
It's crazy. I mean, everybody seems to want buy-to-let right now. And one of the big things that we're doing, which we think is really important, and we don't think other agents are always doing, so important, is to actually ask the question when someone's making an offer. Question, is your offer still valid post 31st of March? Because on the 1st of April, of course, Kit, everything changes. And we're going to flash up a graph now to show you the difference for buy-to-let investors now and after the 1st of April. The reason that's relevant is, imagine you're buying at 300,000. Well, a buy-to-let investor after the 1st of April will have to find another £9,000. So we're clarifying with them now when they make the offer. Question, is your offer still valid post the 1st of April? Because if it's not, then we have to consider that seriously against other buyers, because it may well be that another buyer is in a better position and maybe saying, look, we can take the hit on it if it comes to that, because realistically most buyers now sadly will not make that deadline, especially when we're talking about flats, and obviously buy-to-let is largely flats, because of the time it takes for management inquiries and the like to come through.
Yeah, and I did actually have a recent case on a property that it went over in excess of asking price.
Indeed,
yeah,
which is not unusual actually for us at the moment. They've had so many there, and that's where we can add the extra value, as we've mentioned before, is that one thing we're very good at is making sure that we get the maximum for the properties that we market for our clients. We think that's the most important thing. We don't forget who pays us, and make sure we get you the absolute maximum for your home if you're selling. So if you're considering selling, do give us a call and we'll gladly have a chat with you at any time.
And back to the applicant on this one, I did actually ask him the question as to whether or not he'd be willing to proceed after the stamp duty, and he actually answered no. So that's obviously helpful for us, because I was then able to put that to our vendor with the other offers and say, obviously this gentleman wouldn't be looking to proceed. We were then able to choose another buyer. Everyone's happy.
And if you hadn't have done that, of course, the worst situation would be the buyer pulls out post 1st of April. We know it's going to happen with a lot of buyers. They will pull out because they haven't been asked the question, and their agents have not really done the right service for their client. But, that's for other agents to worry about, not us, I know. Kit, some other interesting news this week.
Yes, recently in kind of property news has been self-cert mortgages. Now, I'm not too kind of familiar with what are they. So what are self-cert mortgages?
Well, self-certification is basically you tell the lender what your income is and they believe you, regardless of what proofs you hold. For a while they were called the liar loans, and it's widely held that they were the reason for the breakdown in 2006-07 when property prices dropped and the whole market crashed on the back of too many loans being given out by lenders offering frankly ridiculous loans. I mean, there were at one stage, Northern Rock for instance were offering 125% mortgages, can you believe? And self-cert mortgages were everywhere. So if you said I earn 100,000, then they would believe you. Well, now a new company's come along called Self-Cert, and it's one of the big payday loan companies, Quick Quid, I believe, the owner of Quick Quid that's started this company. It's called selfcert.co.uk. They've somehow circumvented the rules by having the company offshore and doing an online version, but they only have a relatively small amount of money, frankly, so their books are already full. If you look on their website, selfcert.co.uk, you'll see that they say we can't take any more inquiries. You can imagine they were flooded from the moment that they actually said, look, we'll accept your version of what you earn. Obviously, because they're a payday lender, they probably have quite sophisticated ways of making sure people can pay the loans. And there will always be exceptions where people can't physically prove their income. And, it would have been a good option for them. But unfortunately, they're out of money. I hope that other lenders will now step into the fray. But under UK regulation, it's not allowed. So it would have to be another offshore model. Interesting development.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Do you think they'll become more common or popular in the future?
Yeah, I think they'll always be popular. The question is whether we can get someone to actually do them. I've got a feeling that this will end up with institutional investment, because the idea works, and it's not necessarily the case that just because someone can't prove their income they can't pay the loan, as the likes of Quick Quid have proven by making billions in the way that they work. So I do think it's an interesting development, and I expect there to be other lenders to follow suit, but I don't think for one moment it will become mainstream anytime soon.
I was about to say, because just before we wrap that one up, you did mention earlier that also they weren't looking at London. They weren't bothered with
That's right. Yeah, Self-Cert in particular will not look at London. They feel that London's a bubble. It's funny, really, because ironically we feel the opposite, that London offers security, because the one thing you can always guarantee in London is the buy-to-let investor underpinning the market and the rental market being so strong that actually you've always got that as a backstop, and you don't have that necessarily in other parts of the country. So we think maybe their valuation model there could require tweaking, but that's for them to decide. But maybe there'll be some more lenders come along and do the same thing. Very interesting development though, and very unusual for the market at the moment.
Moving on to another headline that we've seen, rising house prices like a second salary. Now this was a article that was published in The Sun, and it's a very interesting concept in terms of if you work out the statistics. They've worked out that homeowners in part of London earned £64 every working hour last year. In terms
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And to kind of put it into perspective, the smallest increases were £14 an hour, which was £27,000 over the year, and that was in Dagenham. So if you just obviously compare 14 to the 64, it shows, as you were just speaking about,
the regional variation.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah, it's massive. But to think that your property can out-earn your salary just seems crazy, but it's been going on for a long time now, and especially in London, of course, where the rise has been more meteoric.
And yes, so in the last article that I believe we have for today, Ken, you were going to speak something about, was it to do with the landlords on buy-to-let?
Yeah, there's an interesting article in the Financial Times and the Times where the CEO of Paragon, one of the large lenders in the UK for buy-to-let mortgages, discusses the future of buy-to-let in the light of all the new regulation, the fact that it seems relentless, the amount of punishment that the government is prepared to throw at the buy-to-let landlord. Nigel Terrington's taking the opposite view, and the view that we take, that actually, okay, you're going to lose a few buy-to-let landlords on the way. This is just going to intensify the problem. Rents are going to go up because there's no supply, and that's sad for tenants and for buy-to-let investors. Obviously, it shows that there's potential for future growth. So, interesting.
And so, yes, to recap, very busy week last week, and we are looking forward to the coming busy week next week. And obviously, as always, if you ever do want to contact us or give us a call, as we mentioned, before we do finish, we had a couple of properties recently last week that went in excess of the asking price.
Yeah, and this is quite common now, so it's why really you do need, even if you're selling through another agent, you just want to check with us, just give us a call through and we're happy to have a chat with you about that. We're going to flash up the phone number and email address now, so you can get in contact if you need to. One last thing I've just been reading here, The Guardian's been exploring their 20-year property boom, and some interesting statistics come out of that too. Since 1996, average house prices have risen across the UK by 281%. That sounds a lot, doesn't it? Actually, it's nothing when you compare it with London, which has risen by 501%, which goes to underline what we were saying just now, actually, Kit, doesn't it? Buy-to-let landlords have benefited the most, typically earning returns of £14,987 for each £1,000 invested 20 years ago. If you think about that, that's £14,000 for £1,000, isn't it, roughly? Amazing, really.